Hey everybody, welcome to Cut, Transform, Glue. So it is finally time to paint this combat robot model and give it life. In the last episode, I gave each of its 37 pieces the final coat of primer, making them ready to be painted. But before I could start working on its camo, I had to apply what I call the chipping layer. So I began by putting each piece on a wooden stick, and then I could add a coat of red and black primer. The idea right here is to create some specks of color randomly across the surface, and the reason for that will be clear as I move forward on the projects. You guys will see. Now, the painting process is long and quite confusing, so let me take some time to actually explain what's going on with the layers. So far we have the model and the primer, and of course I just showed you guys the chipping layer. Now for the colors of this one, for its camo, I decided to try something new. As much as I don't like the painting process, I really understand how important it is for the model and for the storytelling, and I've always wanted to try a digital camo, so this is where I went with this one. Now the colors I chose for this pattern were a bit weird. One of my favorite color combinations is pink, black and green, and so I decided to try this unusual color combination on this Mac. Now I know this looks very unusual for a military camo, but I love how it looks and it matches perfectly the name that I chose for the robot. We have the base beige color, a couple of greens, and we also have this warm dark gray. And I also decided to throw in a pink that is very close to the base color just to make things fun. I also made this accent color right here, and it makes no sense in terms of camouflage, but it makes the thing look super cool. Okay, so then came the first color layer. I applied the base beige color to almost every piece of the project. And as I know some of you guys might be interested, here's the airbrush I use in most of my projects, the Pash H. A simple single action airbrush where I can only control the amount of paint I'm putting out. But of course I have a couple of extra needles, one that's bigger and one that's smaller in case I need them. Okay, so now here's the thing. Here in my country, the options I have in terms of model making paint are very limited. The world-known brands are crazy expensive and just not for me. So my workaround is to use a local brand that is cheap, but as covering the surface can take some time with this paint, I use it very thick. I don't really care about the surface finish or about dripping. This is all going to be chipped anyway and get dirty at the end of the day, so I just move forward without worrying too much about it. With the base color applied, it was time to move to the secondary colors, and this, my friends, was when the masking nightmare began. And let me tell you, when I thought of making the digital camo, I knew this was going to be a real challenge, but I wasn't expecting for it to take as much time as it did. So as you can see, the technique I used was to put a ton of tape on the cutting mat, and then using a snap knife and a ruler, I kind of defined a basic size of what would be the pixel of that camo, and I went applying the smaller pieces of tape on the surface of the model, creating the pattern I had envisioned. And this is what I did for each color, for each shape. I made a mask and I carefully added the paint, and then I removed the mask. Now there's a couple of reasons of why this masking process was so long. First, I couldn't decide on the whole pattern, and because of that I had to, in most cases, go adding color by color, seeing what I needed on each spot based just on what felt right. I could not decide on a ton of shapes at once. Also, the irregularities of the surface of the model made everything even worse. On the top of that, I was using this single cup right here, changing in between the colors of the camo, because I really forgot that I actually had these amazing bottles to quickly change and start the paint. Yeah, this only shows how much I still gotta improve my skills on the painting process. Okay, so this is not actually an extra layer, but I also have right here the accent color that I applied to a couple of pieces to make the model look cool. Also, I forgot to mention, but when I chose the colors for this project, I had to keep in mind that the matte varnish would dull the color a lot, like I'm showing right here. Whenever I finished painting a piece, I did some chipping at it, and here's where that chipping layer makes some sense. Using a sharp tool and sometimes even my fingernails, I scratched some of the paint of the model, revealing the red and the black primer. Now you gotta be strategic about it, scratching only the parts and wear on each piece and makes some sense, and of course the level of wear is important to keep in mind. For this particular model, I'm looking for a level of wear that shows some use but not anything crazy and super beat up. After I chipped all of the pieces, it was time to apply the first coat of glossy varnish to protect what I had and of course to make my life easier on the wash process. Nothing too crazy right here, just a coat of water-based glossy varnish from the same brand of the colors. Next came both the decal and the wash layers. The wash is very straightforward. This is just some dirty colors thinned down so that they run a lot that I applied with a brush while constantly having a rag to clean the model. Something that I like to think when I'm at this process is that I want the model to get very dirty, but then I try to clean it as best as I can, and repeating this loop a couple of times will result the dirt to stay just where it makes sense on the model for the most part. On this project, I also tried something new, and for the first time ever, I made my own decals. The level of detail you can get from an office printer is very interesting, but boy are these hard to handle, and even though they are super thin and delicate, there is some volume to the decal. I wasn't sure whether I should apply the decals before or after the wash, and in my experience, applying them after the wash is the best choice. And here's the reason. If you apply the wash on the top of the decal, some of the thin paint can get in between the decal and the model, creating this very ugly line right here, and this is just not ideal. But after that, the model was ready to receive the final layer of this beautiful 10-layer process right here, the matte varnish. I just had to, of course, as always, sign the model with a marker, and then I applied the final coat of matte varnish to every piece of the project. Now the only thing left to do right now is to put this bad boy together. Now let me be honest, as much as the paint process is super painful to me, finishing up a model is one of the best feelings in the world, and I really like how this one turned out. Now of course I still gotta work on the base, so there's one extra episode coming up soon, so subscribe to the channel so you don't miss that. If you want to support the channel and help me keep going, there's a couple of ways you can do that, the main one being the Patreon. Check the link on the description box, and as always, thanks for watching.